Hey, welcome to Super Social Club. I'm Jeremy. Today I've got a couple of Macallan 12-year-olds, the Fine Oak and the Double Cask. Both use European and American seasoned sherry barrels, whereas the Fine Oak uses an additional ex-bourbon barrel. We'll find out how that makes a difference after I nose them, taste them, and give them a mark. Alright, starting with the 12-year-old Fine Oak. This one's bottled at 40% ABV, and it cost me $60 US on the nose. So the first thing I get right off the bat is like a malty kind of note. It's kind of like that cereal kind of grainy note to it. Then you get just a tad of that Macallan sherry. And you get some nice kind of fruit notes here. You get like red apple, orange, maybe like an underripe pear. You get some nice like sweet notes as well. Honey, vanilla. Then maybe just like a little bit of like this kind of soft style like oakiness. It's pretty light, pretty mild on the nose. That malt note kind of dominates it. But the fruit notes are really nice. Let's go palate. So you get like kind of like a nice like milk chocolate note on the palate. You get those pears again. You definitely get that malty note again for sure. A little bit like a little bit of wood spice. Finish, I'd say like medium to short in length. The honey, the orange, a little bit of oakiness, and definitely the malty note linger around on the finish for sure. Again, it's pretty like mild, pretty clean, pretty crisp, but I think that malty note that kind of runs through the whole thing is a little too dominant. I think otherwise those three casks like work really well together. I mean, the balance is there. It's just that malty note kind of just creeps forward and kind of, dominates the whiskey a little bit too much for my liking. But that being said, I think it's pretty decent. I wish there was a little more of that sherry influence. I feel like there's maybe just a little bit, maybe like too many second fill sherry casks involved in this. If they use maybe a couple more first fills, it might like bump that up a little bit. And then the ABV. I think the ABV is kind of holding this back at 40%. I mean, just from 40 to 43 doesn't seem like much, but I think in most whiskeys that makes like a pretty big difference. I like it. I don't love it. Score-wise for me, I'm going to give this 83 out of 100. And for the value, $60 US, that's a little bit more than I pay for the 12-year-old sherry. So I'm going to knock off a half point for that and give it 82.5 out of 100. Let's go on to the double cask. All right, this is the US release, meaning it's bottled at 43% ABV. I believe the Canadian and the UK releases were both 40%. And it's cost me $65 US on the nose. So you get that like Macallan kind of signature house style sherry note here. It's just a little more muted, a little more turned down than, let's say, like the traditional 12-year-old sherry. You get a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of apple, maybe like some like pie crust, kind of like that pastry style note. But again, pretty light, pretty mild. Not much complexity to it. Let's try palate. All right, so pretty mild on the palate as well. I get honey, that maltiness, a little bit of vanilla, maybe a little bit like apple pie kind of note, but very, very faint, very mild. Finish, I'd say like short to medium length. The honey, that maltiness kind of linger, and a little bit of that sherry. But again, not much depth, complexity, excitement with this one. Maybe just like these seasoned oak casks aren't doing the job of a full maturation of sherry, you know. Second fill, perhaps, a little bit too much second fill. I mean, what was the output of this whiskey, right? I think they bottled a lot of it. So most likely a lot of second fill stuff. Just not that exciting of a whiskey. It's not going to, you know, turn your head. It's not going to make you say, wow. It's not going to do any of that stuff. Score-wise for me, I'm going to give this 78 out of 100. And for value, $65. That's even more than I pay for the 12-year-old sherry. So I'm going to deduct a point and make it a 77 out of 100. Let's quickly do a slight comparison with these two head-to-head. All right, so both these whiskeys shared a couple similarities. They both had that like vanilla, honey, kind of like fruitiness to them. They both had that little bit of that sherry influence. The fine oak was my favorite. I just think that the ex-bourbon cask in there kind of added a little more complexity, a little more depth. That being said, I still think it needed a little more first fill sherry, maybe like pumped it up a little bit more, a little more boldness. And then the ABV, I think the ABV was holding it back a little bit. Just too mild, just too light for my palate anyway. The double cask, this one kind of reminds me of like a poor man's Balvenie double wood 12-year-old, but it's more expensive and not nearly as good. I just think that these things, I mean, the seasoned casks, not quite working in my opinion. I couldn't imagine this thing bottled at 40% ABV. Even at 43, I think it still needs to be cranked up even more. But again, too much second fill barrels in my opinion. It lacks the richness, the boldness, the depth that like even just the 12-year-old sherry cask gives you. And these are more expensive. So, I mean, I get it. I get Macallan is trying to reach like a huge clientele. And they pump out a lot of good whiskey. They pump out a lot of just mediocre kind of style whiskey. You know, that's why I think a lot of people are they get kind of fed up with Macallan. I know the prices in the UK are just way more money than they are in the US. So it's frustrating. You get lower ABV, you get more expensive prices, and you hear, you know, everyone talk really highly of Macallan. You know, the stuff that I've had from them is good. It's really good. The stuff that I've had from them is mediocre. It's just mediocre. So there you have it. I wouldn't recommend buying these ones. I think for the money, buy the 12-year-old sherry cask if you're in the US. 43%, $55, $60. A better deal than these two and a better whiskey in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. What's your favorite Macallan 12-year-old? Is it the fine oak? I know a lot of people like this one. The double cask, I just don't think is there. The 12-year-old. Let me know if you've had the Grand Reserve 12-year-old. Grand Reserva. I think it's an Asian market release only. It looks amazing. Higher ABV. Looks nice and rich, like dark. Oh, maybe a lot of first fill on that. I appreciate it as always, guys. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. What's your view on Macallan? I know that they're coming out with they're redoing the gold with the like double cast gold edition. Wouldn't recommend buying that. I don't think I'm even going to bother trying it. I mean, how can it be good? I don't think it can. Leave me a comment down below, guys. Give it a thumbs up if you want. I appreciate it as always. Cheers.